Welcome, everybody, to another round of Ask the Expert. Today, we are actually having one of the biggest topics, I would say, because today we are talking about the solid foundation of their SuccessFactors suite, all employee data, organizational structure, and core processes all align on that platform and build something that you can add on to. Right. So today's episode is about, surprise, surprise, SAP SuccessFactors Employee Central, the core of the SuccessFactors suite, and also the place where global standards and local requirements, the everyday HR world meet and come together. For that, my today's guest is Susanna Ferreira, and she is a managing consultant in our Switzer team who supports medium to very, very large scale projects, international, national, whatever is needed. And most recently, she worked as a project lead for the rollout at Comax, which is also an international company right there. And since this is a universal topic, we decided to have it in English. So welcome, Susanna, to our today's Ask the Expert episode.
Hi, Leslie. Happy to be here.
Yes, I'm very happy to see you again after our summer meeting.
Yes.
Sadly via video, but other than that, we will dive directly into the question if that's okay with you. So my very, very first question, Susanna, is that Employees Central is always described as the backbone of SAP SuccessFactors. Does that really mean, or what does that really mean in practice? And when do companies realize just how important this is for them?
So we say that Employee Central is the backbone of SAP SuccessFactors. And what do we mean by that is that it provides the trusted foundation for the entire HR landscape. So this is essentially where all the information about employees, organizational structures, jobs, and so forth come together. That information drives much more than just HR administration. So it can influence several areas and processes like payroll, time management, recruiting, reporting, approvals, and even other systems, okay, which are connected. So if this foundation is inconsistent, you can imagine the impact, right? This will travel very quickly across the whole organization and all of these different systems and processes. Companies recognize this importance during the transformation and, of course, the international rollouts or implementation. So they discover that different locations might use different terms, they have different processes, maintain data accordingly with different standards. So Employee Central will create the opportunity to establish one reliable source of HR data. So of course, this means there needs to be agreement of what does that mean, how data is defined and who is responsible for that. But yeah, so Employee Central is not simply an HR system, is an enabler for the digitalization.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel the same way. So when companies transfer or move from, let's say, HR system or local HR system or SAP HCM systems to Employee Central, what do they most often underestimate before the rollout begins?
So different systems have to talk to each other. They are built in different ways. And the understanding of how do we translate what we had in the old system to the new system, it's the key. This translation can be a little bit easier or guided. For example, if we are talking about SAP systems, so from HCM to SuccessFactors, there is some proposals, of course, from SAP, how customer will have their own differences, right? So we cannot just use that fully. We always have to analyze what makes sense for the customer, with also the new strategy that comes with this transformation. So definitely this understanding and how to bring the data from one system to the other also, and this means not only technologically, okay, so that part is manageable. It's really the understanding of the data, how to map it, where to maintain it, where are the dependencies. So this is, of course, key.
So you support companies in international rollouts. How do they decide what should be globally standardized, if you want it like that? Where are local requirements generally needed, or where do they need room? What do you think is your experience here?
A good question. So this is one of the first things we need to align with the customers when we start such implementation. It's the approach. Is it a global approach, a more localized approach? This is key. We often see the need of this global approach and harmonization across the whole group, for example. And global approach or global template, global processes does not mean every country is identical, right? Or if we ignore the required, right, country-specific needs. But it brings, or it can create a consistency, right, that will bring value into the whole organization. So, and it's a chance to transform and harmonize. So it can simply be a global definition on particular data. This can be fields, or it could be more strategic decisions on how to approach a full approval process and who is involved or not.
And to different processes and different countries and different approaches, there is also the system that can be adapted wildly, if you want it like that. For example, business rules or different workflows or permission or objects and so on and so on. At what point does flexibility becomes complexity, and how can companies over-engineer the system?
Yes, so the system is very flexible, and there's a lot of, as you mentioned, a lot of tools we can use to that it works in our favor, right? With automatic business rules and processes and all of that. And this brings the flexibility. But of course, the other side is, as you already said, the complexity that it can bring. So we always have to wait in terms of value that it will bring, and also to facilitate or to improve the end user experience and the overall experience in the system, with how difficult, complex will be to maintain it, to control it, to operate it. So the problem is not during the implementation. It's afterwards, when you have to operate the system, you have to keep up with the system, you have to document, understand all of this complexity. This is where it can become a challenge. But we see it always as positive, so we can use it to really help the customer. But we are always very careful that it doesn't pass this line where it doesn't help anyone, is just very complex and very difficult to maintain, and it doesn't bring the value.
So Employee Central is not the only module, let's say, in the SuccessFactors suite. We have, for example, payroll, we have time, we have reporting, whatever a company needs pretty much. But what should companies actually get right when they connect one with the other?
The first requirement, I would say, or clarification should be define which system owns what data or processes. For example, often we have Employee Central as the source system, of all the information, but could be that partially some parts of the information are maintained in another system. I will give a simple example, payroll, right? It could be. And this understanding is very important because then you know where data needs to be maintained, how is the flow of data, and who is also responsible, and what do you have to take care in the different systems, and how this connects to each other. Sometimes you might have an error in your interface that it's not an issue with the interface itself, but it can be a data quality topic, which, the data is not being maintained as it should, or some data is missing. And this is critical for the flow of data between the systems. Also, who should act in which system, who has permission to do which action in the different systems. So this is very key. And therefore, the key message would be companies should think about end-to-end processes. So not about the systems independently, but the full process that they can cover all of this in between the systems, processes, or dependencies to make sure that everything works as it should work.
Yeah, completely. So after we implemented Employee Central and pay and time and everything, we normally would have a go live, right? And this is like our finish line, the day we are looking forward to. That one thing after the go live. So what does a good governance or continuous improvement look like once Employee Central is live?
I usually say to my customers close to the go live, I say after go live is when the actual work starts. So the fun starts. Because it's after go live that the organization begins operating the solution, right? And this is where you can see if there was a strong governance plan or strategy. And this makes a difference. Companies react as soon as they have to manage and operate their system. And good governance means clear and defined responsibilities. So very clearly understanding who owns, not only technically, right? Not only who owns the systems, it's also the processes, security, integrations, local requirements. How does your operating model look like? What does it mean? How do you define, or how does your process or your model clearly defines how to assess, for example, changes in the system, which are based on business value, requirements, what is the technical updates of the system, and the full impact across the whole landscape, right? So this needs to be very clearly defined already before the go live. And on top of this, there is also, you asked about this continuous improvement. So this is a live system. It's a mutating system. And that's also the whole point of having such system, right? It's always transforming. And that's why these bases are so important. It will not stop at the go live. It's only starting. So in all of these operating models, governance, ownership, process steps, it's important to consider things that will just be different now. There's releases. So it's not even because there is a business requirement. It's simply because the technology changed and we need to adapt to it. So there needs to be a process for that. How do we maintain our systems? How do we handle the updates of the systems? How do we document it, right? How do we test it? How do we involve other people to help us doing that? So all of this, it's very important after go live.
Yeah, just advertising in TTS sense. We are also helping customers with releases and new findings in the system so we can keep everyone up to date, right?
Exactly.
So now we go a little bit away from the project kind of view. I would like to talk a little bit about the EC community, because I mean, either international or national, whatever, is ever the same. So what are the benefits of the EC, or the Employee Central community?
The community brings us the opportunity to exchange among different colleagues with different backgrounds, but also a broad experience across different projects, landscapes, business requirements, HR strategy or goals. So really more technical, more business, HR business process related. So we can share our experiences. And on top of that, we can also start analyzing, encounter, document certain patterns that we see in different contexts. So it's beyond just the sharing of knowledge or experiences, is also, oh, okay, we see a pattern here across different entities, different businesses, different approaches. And we can also help each other to challenge our designs, to challenge, to have, for example, lessons learned, and to challenge how do we do the projects, identify maybe some consequences that might not be so obvious in a project perspective. So this means that the customer will benefit from not only the team which is connected or directly involved in the project, but all of this community that it's backing them up to really validate everything, right? And to see other angles.
And you get step by step a little better through other people's influence, right? And other people's experience. Yeah. I want to have a quick closing question, if you want it like that. Employee Central is, of course, a huge system, but there are also tiny decisions that can be made, right? But is there sometimes a decision or something that is taken that may look very small but have a very surprisingly big impact that might also be a little, let's say, expensive at the end? Do you have any idea?
I have several in my mind. It's hard to say just one, but I can give maybe one or two examples. So one example could be how you define your job classification. So, in Employee Central is just, I'm just, quoting, like just a field with a list of values, right? An object in a field with a list of values. But that has such a big impact on the business processes in several areas. Okay, so could be in the talent part, in the payouts, and job definition, job profiles. It can have so much impact that this is always something we have to look at it. It's not just, okay, let's upload data, that's it. It has much more behind it. The same of how do you define your company structure? It's very simple. We have the objects and we just use them. That's it. But actually not really, because it has so many things in the background that can make it slightly different. And it's not so direct. You really have to understand the strategy of the company, also technically what systems are integrated, and this will make a difference, of course, on the outcome.
Thank you very much, Susanna. You gave us a very, very, very good inside view of Employee Central. Thank you for coming and participating, and very much looking forward to see you again in person, but this was also very good. And bye-bye to all the viewers of Ask the Expert, and we will see each other again soon. Bye.
Thank you very much. It was a pleasure.